Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 115 of the longest tenured Denver Nuggets spin off podcast in the world. Welcome to the DNVR Nuggets' Serbian Corner. My name is Miroslav, and before we begin, please let me remind you to like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the DNVR Sports YouTube channel, even though I just cannot believe that there's somebody not already subscribed to the channel. 100,000 people already subscribed. What an amazing accomplishment by the whole crew. By the way, Serbian Corner, about 1% of all videos, so not too shabby, I guess. Also, the audio version is perfect for your commute or to make your office/home office time more bearable. If you want to support the show more directly, you can become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/MiroslavCuk, just like my Seco tier supporters, Peter Plummer and Daniel Lynch. Let's start with the Raptors game that happened almost a week ago. The Nuggets started the game lethargic, just like in the first two games last week. Toronto was in the lead for most of the game, despite not having Bruce Brown, Emmanuel Quickley, and Kelly Olynyk. The Nuggets were down 10 with 2 minutes to go in the regulation, but Joker took over. The Raptors missed two free throws, and Jamal hit a Michael Jordan-like circus shot to tie the game and take it to overtime. The Nuggets won in overtime by playing well for about 2 minutes, but also thanks to RJ Barrett, who took an ill-advised shot for the win in the last seconds. It was a paradigm of who the Raptors are at this stage of their rebuild, a bunch of super athletic, bad decision makers. Joker scored 40, and Jamal played very well outside of shooting 5 of 19 on non-circus shots. Aaron Gordon was flirting with the triple-double, Christian Brown was playing his ass off, and Michael Porter had the fewest points of all the starters while playing pretty bad defense. At one moment, it looked like the Nuggets bench didn't know Dick. And that is strange because he is a great shooter in his second NBA season. Grady did go 2 of 7 from the three-point line, but was wide open on several of those. Strotter was perfect from the field, and Russell Westbrook gave some production too. P. Watt was very bad on offense again, but did manage to go to the foul line 4 times. Dario Saric had a very bad 4-minute stint and was benched after that. Several lucky breaks prevented the Nuggets from starting 0-3. Let's go to the Nets game. That was the second night of the back-to-back, so what could go wrong? Well, the rebuilding Nets could make 7 threes in the first quarter and a total of 40 points on 17% from the field. That dug a 13-point hole that widened to 18 points mid-second quarter. At that point, the Nuggets concentrated on two things. They knew they couldn't chase the Nets around the arc, so they hoped they would start missing a bit. The other thing was their own high-octane offense, especially against a weak team like Brooklyn. Their bet was a solid one, so they got to a clutch finish of the regulation, this time by his Lord and Savior, Nikola Jokić. In the overtime, the Nuggets were a better team, just like 24 hours before that. Joker ended up with 29, 18, and 16, this time without an attempt from 3. Gordon and Jamal Murray had 24 apiece. Russell Westbrook pitched in with 22 and 5 off the bench, his best game so far in the Nuggets uniform. And both Porter and Brown were in double digits. Next, 3 nights after that, the Timberwolves in Minneapolis. The game started well. The starters minus Jamal Murray were ready to compete. They got the small lead, but the bench of Russ, Strotter, Payton, MPJ, and Saric fell down big. So much so that, again, we did not get Saric's second stint. The starters climbed back in, but then Jamal got hit in the face and had to leave the game. The second bench stint had Hunter Tyson in it, and he played better than Dario. It went pretty well, so Joker didn't have to dig himself from the hole again. They had a 10-point lead with 3.5 minutes to go, but then Nickel Alexander Walker drained 2 threes while Joker lost 2 possessions trying to fight in a clogged paint. Yes, the Timberwolves welcomed Denver's closing lineup that included all 3 of Westbrook, Brown, and Gordon. It was very obvious that not having Jamal meant having to tweak the lineup to improve the spacing with Russ in. Alas, the Nuggets ended up with a couple of layup attempts in a lot of crowd for Brown, and that was all she wrote. The Nuggets lost the game. Too bad for the sensational game by Aaron Gordon and good performances by MPJ and Brown. Joker only got a somber double. Slacker. Finally, last night, after a 3-game road trip, the Nuggets came back to Denver. There are not many better teams against which to get a bounce-back game than the Utah Jazz without a couple of their best scorers. MPJ started strong. Aaron was hitting threes for the second game in a row. Russ couldn't hit anything other than dunks, but brought a lot of energy to the team. The first bench stint was shaky, but the Nuggets found an interesting five, a jumbo lineup where Christian Brown and Hunter Tyson play at the guards position, while the Giants' starting front court was next to them. That lineup opened a big lead, so the starters wouldn't have to play in the fourth quarter. My favorite stat of the night, MPJ, Joker, Brown, Strutter, and Aaron Gordon combined for 15 of 24 from the three-point line. MPJ, Strutter, and Brown were filling it up, but Joker's 18-point third quarter gave him another scoring title of the game next to another somber double. Okay, that is enough of a rant over this week. So the Nuggets went 3-1, won 3 games against bad teams and lost a game to a good team. But it is time to go to the second part of the show. We all have a favorite Nuggets season, and mine was 2018-2019 season. It was the first playoff season of this Nuggets era, and the team was very exciting. But another thing that happened that year was me discovering that I was equal part the fan of the team as well as team's media coverage. Sure, you are probably right if you say that the Nuggets media coverage right now is at its best, which makes sense. It is a recent champion. But back then, we had a lot of great voices driven almost exclusively by enthusiasm. We had Adam Mares 5 times a week on Locked On Nuggets. We had Jeff Morton with his weekly show. And the Sifs had 5 different shows every week. Zach Mikash, Ryan Blackburn, Brendan Vogt, Jeremy Poli, and 2 of my guests for today, Gordon Gross and Nick Hertzog. Gordon is still active and better than ever, riffing about the Nuggets with Zach every week on the Denver Stiffs show. And Nick is on a hiatus from his hit show, The Dig. Still, I'm always hoping he'll be back Schwarzenegger style. Welcome back to the show, John.
I'm still recovering from that Grady Dick joke. Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff.
I warned you. I warned you that I had a Grady Dick joke.
No one can be prepared.
That's true. That's true. And I did it like 5 days ago, so you probably forgot about it. Gordon, what's up?
Not much. Just I'm glad the Nuggets are winning the games they should win. I just would like them to win them more effectively. So, and as we talked about before we came on air, winning against a decent team would be nice. So that's going to have to happen this week, or it's going to be a real bad week.
That is true. That is true. And the Nuggets are 3-3, but 4 of those games were very, very close. It could have been 1-5, and also it could have been 5-1, I guess.
Right.
What feels closer to reality?
3-3.
You think? No. Well, I mean, if the 2 1-5 or 5-1, I think 1-5 is probably closer. Like they had 2 overtime games to get those 2 of those 3 wins, so it was very easy to have lost those games. It's not. It's the lack of execution in the games that they dropped that they could have won was throughout the game, whereas showing up really happened very briefly in those games against Toronto and out there with Brooklyn?
Yeah. Nick, do you feel that the Nuggets are shaky in their execution, or is it a personnel thing? Is it just too clunky in late game possessions for them this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a combination of a couple of bad things to start the season. First off being that MPJ and Murray couldn't shoot for the first few games.
Yeah.
MPJ is getting it going. Murray now has had a little setback here with this concussion protocol, so he hasn't really had a chance to get it going yet. So I think you had concurrently that happening while you also have this new bench trying to figure itself out. And the bench has been an unmitigated disaster so far. It's been horrendous. So when you add those two things together, it doesn't matter that you're getting maybe the best stretch of Jokic play we've ever seen in the last 6 games. Maybe that's a bit strong, but it's been unreal.
He's been incredible.
What he's been doing. He's been incredible. And that's the reason they're 3-3. On a more positive note, I've been ecstatic about Christian Braun. I think this looks like the right call. It would have. We'll probably get more into that later. I don't want to go too deep into this yet, but really excited about what he's bringing, and I think that's a good sign. And I think I haven't like given up on the bench, but I think that's gotten us where we are. Is we're getting great superstar play. We're getting really mixed play from the other starters, and then we're getting, negative 25 from the bench just about every game.
Yeah. So Gordon, throughout this off season, at the beginning and also at the beginning of the regular season, the national media have been dancing on our graves. Like they've already crossed over the Nuggets as a real contender, which by the way might be fair. But what we tried as fans of the team to say to them is, listen, guys, our starting five is still going to be pretty awesome. Like Christian Braun is not KCP, but that doesn't mean that starting five is going to be worse. There's actually possibility for it to be maybe not better, but as good as the last version was. But also our idea was our bench couldn't possibly be as bad as last season's bench. Yeah. Because now we have 2 veterans coming in who are going to really stabilize our non-Jokic minutes. What happened?
It's the bench has just been terrible. And part of that is losing KCP because it makes Christian move to the starters, which means the bench doesn't have him. And it requires more of Peyton Watson, who started the year injured, so he was injured and rusty. Not only don't you have Christian, but Peyton's ineffective. So you don't have any like major defensive stopper in any way. And then Russ is coming in to play with guys who've never played with a point guard like him, and he doesn't know them either. And he and Dario Saric, unfortunately, do not like complement each other the way that they are playing right now. And that is causing any number of issues. Because Russ is trying to drive the basket at 100% speed, and they aren't really running plays for the bench. I thought Malone was going to have more of a handle on that because he's a very hands-on coach. But it hasn't been that way. They've just let Russ do whatever he's going to do, and he has made like 10% of his shots. He had one game where he made a bunch of free throws and made some shots, and otherwise nothing. So if he's not shooting, he is shooting, he's not making shots. One of the benefits, one of the benefits of Dario is he can actually score some. He's not the world's best defender, but he can score some. He can do some pick and roll. He can pick and pop. But they're not running that with the bench. And so they had a couple of possessions with Dario where he was stretching the line out 3, and then that worked out okay. But they went away from that real quick too. It just feels like the bench doesn't have a plan. And this is honestly where not having Deron Holmes really hurts them, because he's a big who could score and he's switchable. And they don't have that guy. And then Vlatko's been out with the ankle injury. So unfortunately, they're really hurting from a creating offense point of view, because they don't have guys that can shoot other than Strother, and Strother can't stop fouling anyone. So I actually like Julian a lot, he's going to have to control the fouling problem that, like, he's fouling like Isaiah Hartenstein. I don't know what the heck's going on there. But without Julian, if Julian has a bad night, you know, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And that is unfortunate because he's a streaky shooter. And so he is not a consistent, I'm going to make 40% of all my shots. I'm going to make 60% of my shots one night and 20% the next night. So the Nuggets just don't have the deep personnel to go say, that's fine, we'll go to our second shooter. They don't have a second shooter off the bench. And they've been trying to get around that with adding Mike back into the bench. But again, they're not really running an offense to feature him in those minutes. So it's just a work in progress. They're going to have to be patient, and they're going to have to not give up on some of these pieces that don't work at all right now because they don't have a lot of other options.
Yeah, Miroslav, I have a question for you.
Yeah, of course.
I feel like it's more of an accusation. I feel like you got my hopes up about Dario in the offseason. What's happened here?
I have to tell you guys, like, yes, I did. I was super high on Dario inclusion on the team because he is a really, really, really good player.
Yeah,
he really is. I promise he is a really good player. I forgot about the ancient curse of the backup center on the Denver Nuggets.
Yes, you underestimated.
Mm-hmm. I underestimated. Yeah. And honestly,
That's
guys,
fair.
I want to know what you think about it. Like, is it should be on Malone at least a little bit, right? Like, if you are an amazing coach exclusively when you have a top 7 guy of all time on the court,
mm-hmm.
and you are like a sub-mediocre I don't want to, you're just a bad team without him. There has to be something on him too, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to think Jokic is covering for a lot. He's covering for roster construction issues. He's covering for, potentially some coaching weaknesses here. I mean, to Malone's credit, he went away from the Murray Westbrook stagger after that was a disaster in I think it was the first game, maybe second game they were still doing that.
Yeah, already in the second game they switched it up.
They did switch it up.
It was amazing. Okay. Yeah,
so that was a big improvement. You got to keep shooters out there. Murray can shoot, but Russ needs to be the one creating plays. He needs to not be the guy standing in the corner,
right,
waiting to shoot. We don't need that. And Russ is so complicated because I've realized now watching him. So I've been long time Westbrook hater. I don't know that there's ever been a player in the NBA that I hated more than Russell Westbrook, to be honest. And now that he's on my team, it's tough. But I was really optimistic about this in this specific role that he's in on this team at this stage of his career. I thought this could actually work, and I still think it could. But what's really frustrating to me is that he does just enough to keep you excited about him. He'll get the big run from behind block or something, or he'll have the aggressive attitude at a time in the game when you feel like you really need it from somebody, right? He'll be able to turn that on, and then you're yeah, Westbrook's my guy. And then every game he's you look at the stats in the game, he's minus 22 for the game, and it's at some point those plays, those momentum swings, they're not offsetting how bad he is, how horrible his shooting is, and what a liability he is. Just as a scorer and as an erratic playmaker at this point in his career. So I don't know what to do with that, because I like some of the stuff he's bringing. And then I agree with you too that it seems like he should be able to work with Dario a little bit more than what we've seen so far, which is he's almost looking unplayable right now, I would say. He was a DMP, right? Coach's decision in the last game.
Dario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to say what. I don't know that I have the answers here to if there's something Malone is specifically failing at here, or that he's not putting these guys in the right position to succeed based on their strengths. But I mean, at some point it does seem like if we keep having this problem, every year. It's like somebody's going to have to take the blame here at some point. It's either Booth constructing benches that just are not working, or Malone is not able to coach these guys up, or they're just not on the same page. And so, I'm not sure, but there's something that's just not working. What's been happening the last.
We are going to continue. We are going to continue on that note right after the first break. But before that, I have to tell you a bit about floors. If you need new flooring, you don't need to look further. So many people already enjoy Empire Today floors. Just ask them about their great experience. With Empire Today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and price match guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they have copycats, but they can't beat them on quality, service, or speed, so they use phrases like lowest price in the business. That's because they offer low quality products that Empire Today simply won't carry. Empire Today won't promise the lowest prices because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in theirs. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need and not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Their virtual floor designer is a great way to see new floors, how the new floors will look in any space, including your house. Flooring is all Empire Today does. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice from them. They service their own warranties. If an issue does arise, just call Empire. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code DNVR. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/DNVR. That's empiretoday.com/DNVR for details. Okay, we are back. And Nick, you mentioned a very important theme just now about the Cold War between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. That's been going on for quite a long time now. And I think after that Ramona Shelburne's article for ESPN, that it got a tiny bit more serious. This is just my personal impression of it, because that piece, in my view, was to explain Calvin Booth's angle of the whole situation, because everybody is burying the Nuggets for being cheap and letting KCP walk after losing a couple of guys the season prior to the last one. And it is like, yeah, but this and that, you need to understand this is the way these things were supposed to happen if the roster is going to stay healthy for a prolonged time. This, that. And basically, all that article said was we had a coaching failure on the Nuggets because all the ingredients were already there, but they weren't developed enough and stuff like that. Now, Gordon, last night you could have seen a lineup of Joker and Michael Porter playing together with CB, Strother, and Peyton Watson, which is basically the dream of Calvin Booth. So do you think that Michael Malone is kind of in the pressure cooker now to obey the will of the GM, or do you think I'm just overblowing everything?
The thing is, once the season starts, it's Malone's. It's not Booth's. He has no say over who plays. He has no say over nothing. He can fire people. He could trade away guys that Malone likes. Like, that could happen. And that has happened to Malone in prior seasons, where guys got traded so that Malone would play young guys. That's happened. But if the Ramona Shelburne article was just to start excuses, there's a long way to go in the season for that. Like, the Nuggets have the best starting five, one of them anyway, in the league. So that was put together mostly not by Calvin Booth. Christian Brown was his, but the rest of it is not his. The rest of it was Tim Connolly's. So his job is to strengthen that group with guys who can actually do jobs. And he may have done that with Dwayne Strother. The whole point is you need a guy who's not Michael Porter Jr. who can do Michael Porter Jr. things. And that's Dwayne Strother's job. Unfortunately, he also plays defense like Mike right now. So that's problematic. But you're looking for a guy who can score off the bench. So you got one. The real concern for the Nuggets is whether Booth is going to go down with his guys, because the guy that is most tradable, who has value, is Peyton Watson. Because you have Christian Brown, and he's going to play with the starters, and he's going to look good with the starters because everyone looks good with Jokic. And also, he's a good player. He's a good fit there. But, like, come on. Christian Brown, did not look awesome all last year, playing mostly with the bench. And he's looking like he took leaps forward. But did he take leaps forward? Or is that just what happens when you play next to Jokic and he finds you on cuts that other guys were not finding you on? So for me, that role, that choice between Brown and Watson, because they're both up for extension after this year, that if you want to trade somebody and you're going to worry about who you're going to pay, I doubt the Nuggets are going to pay both of them. So you need Christian Brown to keep playing well, and you need Peyton Watson to start to find a role. And if he can't shoot, that role is limited, and he's going to be tradable because you already extended Aaron Gordon. There's no dilemma about whether or not Peyton Watson is the heir apparent to the Aaron Gordon role. That's not happening anymore. They paid Aaron Gordon specifically because Peyton Watson cannot play that role. He's too skinny. He's not the right kind of player for that. So now you got to find a role that is correct for Peyton Watson on your squad, or you have to move him to shore up your bench and let someone else find a role for him that works, because he's a very talented kid, but you can't keep wasting these Jokic years. You just can't.
Yeah, I agree. And Nick, Peyton Watson right now looks like a longer version of Shaq Harrison. Like, we've seen a guy that plays amazing defense, but is almost unusable on offense. And Peyton did get did get to the line several times in these couple of games, and had a couple of layups that went in. But other than that, he felt not ready or not in control while playing on offense. Do you think he's trying too much, or is he just not in the proper shape to be playing better than he is right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he's definitely taken a step back, and I'm not sure why. We are still fairly early into the season, and for a young player like that, I want to give him a little bit of leash before I really start burying him, because he has shown flashes of what he could be potentially, but it could also be that we've just kind of seen what his ceiling is, and now we're just going to get kind of a range of play below that. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's really tough when you have Westbrook, who already doesn't need to be guarded, really. And then you have a second guy out there who doesn't really need to be guarded on offense. I mean, it just makes life miserable for any of the other scorers, right? So I don't think that's really doable. And then there's the other piece here that's just baffling to me is the Zeke Naji stuff. I just don't understand why Booth signed him to the contract he did. And then I don't know if this is getting off topic here, but I just feel like these are kind of related things, because it's like, I think Booth had a certain idea for how he imagined this second unit. And then, so he sort of like handed that over to Malone, and then, Malone is just like, not doing that. And so we're not seeing, I mean, I think Najee was supposed to, be a pretty decent shooting big, who could play that, backup. like center position. And then the Darren Holmes piece of this, obviously he got hurt really early on, and I think they were really actually relying on him for significant minutes. I think that's clear now, and that's also really a bummer. So yeah, it just seems like I guess if I had to sum up everything, I feel like I'm spinning my wheels here a little bit, because it just feels like there's nobody's like things just like people aren't on the same page or something. I don't know how to I'm not behind the scenes, and I don't really know who to kind of like believe about. I mean, I think at this point it's pretty clear that there is some kind of rift between the front office and Malone, right? I think that seems like that's pretty clear. But I don't care really. Like at some point you need to play,
figure it out, yeah.
Right? And figure it out and be adults and professionals. And like, I think there's talent here. So I don't know what the issue is. And maybe I want to blame Malone a little bit more for being inflexible here.
I want to come back to Russell Westbrook, because I think he is still the most fascinating part of the team right now. The most fascinating new part of the team anyway. I've seen people mentioning that he's been a positive contributor to the team so far. And you know what? I get it. I really like Russ's energy. Like the contrast between his energy and Jamal's energy to start the season is stark. And I really thoroughly enjoy it. But guys, Russ is shooting 23% from the field and 20% on threes. So basically, he's also shooting 20% on twos. Which is
at
amazing.
the rim. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Last night, he shot, I believe, 2 of 9. And, I'm pretty sure both of those hits were dunks. Other than that,
and
nothing is going in.
I don't know what he finished, but he was at least 0 for 4 from the free throw line at one point.
Yeah, it's rough. It's really rough. But Gordon, give me your assessment. Was he so far a positive or a negative, or maybe a neutral part of the team?
Russ is both the reason that we have absolutely lost games and the reason that we have come back in some of those games to win. So that energy has definitely played up, but I'm sorry. Like, if you're going to be taking 10 shots a game or whatever he's taking,
9.5
in like 20 minutes, like it's not like he's playing 35 minutes a game. If you're going to do that and you're going to make 2 of them, if you're only making 2 of 10 shots every night, like, yes, that's 6 points a game you're leaving on the ground that other people would make. So, at some point you're going to have to pass the ball. But he's not going to be this bad the whole season. He can't be, first off. No one has ever been this bad.
No, nobody since 1948. I looked it up. Like, if a guy shoots 9 shots a game at least and scores like less than 25% of the shots, you have to go all the way to 1948 to find that guy.
Yeah. Like this is not a thing. And Russ has been a very consistent 44-ish% field goal percentage guy for the last decade. Like it is possible to lose your shooting touch. But he doesn't have any shooting touch. That's not what he lost. He lost finishing touch. And that's honestly completely implausible for it to just fall off this way. So he's going to revert back to the mean. It's going to happen. So I don't have those concerns about Russ. I do have concerns about the fact that, as Nick was saying, that we're going to have trouble if you have Russ who can't shoot outside of the paint and Watson who can't shoot outside of the paint, and guys just don't defend either of them, and they just cram the paint. What are you doing about it? Like, if Julian's being run off the line because he's getting hounded because they know he's the only shooter, what is your plan? And luckily, Malone has not been stuck to hockey rotations so far. He has definitely tried with Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. playing some with the bench. Some of that is because his hand has been forced, but some of that is we got to find ways to score with the bench, and I got to have sure ball handlers on the bench. And Aaron Gordon works as a secondary point guard. that was the other thing they wanted from Dario, was for him to be able to facilitate passing, get hockey assists, move the ball around. And they're no functional offense for the bench. So I'm not judging the bench by what's going on so far, but I am judging how they intend to fix it. And that has to be rotating starters in, but that necessarily limits your rotations. Like maybe you need P-Watt to move to to play more with the starters when Aaron Gordon goes to the bench so he can play more with the bench. And that may be a way to get him the same level of, lift in his game that Christian gets playing with Jokic, is having Peyton Watson be in the dunker spot where that's his job, is dunk, block shots, grab rebounds. He's not a great rebounder, but it would be something he could work on, having a known role and working in a functional offense. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to see, is that, they have brought Julian in to play more with the starters. I'd like to see them bring Peyton Watson into play more with, specifically Nikola Jokic, in order to mitigate the disaster that's happening when Watson and Westbrook are on the court together for long extended periods and no one's scoring and no one's defending. That's problematic. You got to pick one thing. The Nuggets don't have one thing they do well with their bench other than run. And so last night in garbage time, they ran and they looked okay. They didn't defend. They gave up almost 30 points in the fourth quarter to scrubs, but they ran and they were out. It was a high pace. They were trying to finish, and that's what you want to see from them. Get those hands in passing lanes, no responsibility, grab a rebound, take off down the court. So if last night helped them iron that out, great. But their identity has to be something. Right now, their identity is being bad, and that's not sustainable.
I mean, what has me concerned about even some of the staggering stuff that we're talking about here, though, is that just we're really using the starters heavily already early in the season.
Yep.
And there's just the kind of like mental like fatigue, I think, that comes about from this sort of pattern that they're getting into now, which is Jokic goes to the bench with a 5 to 10 point lead. He comes back out with a 10-point deficit.
Right.
And that's rinse and repeat every game. And it's like, at some point, I feel like this is why we saw the kind of like fatigue we saw in the playoffs last year, because they were kind of fighting this uphill battle with their bench the whole season, and they just don't have enough guys that can contribute and can just like even maintain a lead. I mean, at this point, we're not even looking for like a bench superiority. It would be nice if we just had a bench that could play to net even occasionally, and that's just like. And if we can't get that, then yeah, it's just going to be these 40-minute games for Jokic all regular season. And how are we going to get through a gauntlet in the West in the playoffs?
I want to
that
stay
kind of
on
wear and
that
tear.
point, but we need to take another break. And after that, I want to talk about the starters playing too many minutes so far. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back. So, Nick, you mentioned Joker playing too many minutes to start the game. He actually played almost 40 minutes per game in the first 5 games. Thank God they blew up Utah Jazz, so the starters didn't have to play in the fourth quarter last night. But before that, it was pretty dire. I just don't want to see that. On the other hand, I understand Michael Malone's logic there. They were down 0-2 to start the game, lost 2 games at home, and he was already in the panic mode. He wasn't losing those 2 games. By the way, he might have lost both of those games. They were very lucky to get those 2 games on the road on the East Coast. But this season, we've seen something we haven't seen in the last couple of seasons, and that's the Joker stagger. When Joker plays with 4 bench guys, it did not go as well as it used to. It wasn't a positive lineup like it used to, and there's a bunch of different parameters there, including Russ. Like Russ is a big big unknown for every game. You don't know if you're getting 20 and 4 from him or if you're getting 1 of 12 shooting on that particular night. So, Nick, Do you think it is realistic that we see Peyton Watson playing more with the starters when that's introducing one more variable to the whole mix of what's going on with the starters minute, or better said, the Joker minutes this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would rather see the starters' minutes, and in particular Jokic's minutes, reduced, even if that means that we take some rough losses for the next couple of months, because I think that will give the young guys the experience they need to get caught up, to maybe figure some stuff out with the rotations and just the overall chemistry on the bench, and it'll just preserve Jokic, because part of the issue is that it's not so much like Jokic's offensive game, I don't think really gets affected, but I think what we saw in the playoffs last year is when he gets really worn down, it's going to be the defensive side that you're really going to feel it. And there's just only so much. We're just asking just an insane amount from this guy. It's like he's already, I think, giving 110% every night on these regular season games against the Nets. This is not how you win a championship. He should be able to coast through a lot of these games. And so if that means playing Peyton Watson more with the starters, cool. If that means just taking the lumps, I'm okay with being 3 or 4 games under 500, through December or something, if that means we're getting some of these bench issues worked out. But I feel like Nuggets fans and maybe Malone and even maybe even the starters, again, this is this issue of I think the team is just not on the same page. It's they won a championship, and then it was okay, now we've got the young, it was the second youngest championship team in however long, 40 years or something like that, since the Warriors. And as fans, I think we all thought, and I'm sure this was, to some extent what the team thought too, that this was a dynasty now, right? We're young, we're great, we don't really have anybody ready to challenge us, right this moment. So we should be able to get, 2 or 3 in a row here. And then Booth was well, let's hold on that for a second. I don't think we're gonna just bring in a bunch of vets to fill out the bench. We're gonna try to build young guys so we have a 10-year dynasty instead of a 2-year, 3-year dynasty. Now, we could say what we will about that strategy. I think this is kind of where we're at now. Is I think it's time to start having discussions at some point about whether that was, and maybe we need to play out this year still before we really get serious about if it's time to make a change or something, if that ended up being a failed strategy. But that was the strategy, I think. And I don't think Malone ever bought in on that strategy. And so Malone is still trying to just win games. He's just trying to get the first seed in the West or something. When Booth is no, dude, we got to we're trying to build these young guys so that we can kind of build and sustain for the long term. And I just don't think, it's probably just partially even a mentality of a head coach, but especially a head coach who's just won a championship, that you're in win now mode. You're not in win now kind of, but also build for the future mode. I think there's a lot being asked there. Maybe it's too much to ask of that coaching staff, to be honest. I'm not sure. But I think maybe that's there's the kind of core problem here and disconnect is are we trying to rack up as many wins as we can, and it doesn't matter, minutes be damned, and Jokic fatigue and injuries be damned. We just have to scrape and claw and fight our way to a second championship? Or are we willing to take a step back, maybe go another year of Jokic's prime without winning a championship, in the hopes that we get enough of these young guys up to speed? I don't know.
So Gordon, we've seen so many coaches winning the championship and then getting canned in a year or two after that, just got fired. And also coaches of the year got fired the next season, stuff like that. Michael Malone knows that if you drop from a championship to a 6th seed the following season, you're in a hot seat. It's probably logical from his point of view to push for more wins and try to secure better seeding before the playoffs. What he did last season, and of course he played his guys into the ground, even though we've heard stories about players wanting to play more and not being forced by Michael Malone, which is also a big factor here, guys. NBA coaches are not some kind of emperors in those teams. Like,
absolutely
they
not.
need to they need to listen to especially their star guys. So, Gordon, do you think that it is based on what we've seen in these 6 games? Can the Nuggets play a bit more and lose some unexpected games and still be top 6 seed in the West? Or...
I'm not scared of the West. The West is not as scary as it has been in recent years. There's a lot of teams trying out new parts. There's a lot of teams trying to get new fits. One of the only teams that caused Denver significant issues was the Timberwolves, and they just got rid of their other 7-footer that bothered Nikola. Like, Denver's starters were very handily better than Minnesota's starters in that game. It's just that Denver doesn't have a bench. So
and Minnesota's 3 right now. They're not just cruising. Yeah.
They're still working out the kinks. So it's one of these things where the Thunder are exceedingly scary because they have all of the pieces to go get stuff that they don't have once they figure out what they don't have. They got every trade bit there is. The Nuggets don't have any more trade bits. They used them all. They have like one more trade they can really make. It's Peyton Watson and a first for some stuff. Probably with Zeke as a monetary filler. And so whatever you decide to do with the Nuggets, they've got one shot at that. They can sign one free agent veteran. That's it. So you're playing around margins. You got to figure out what you have. So I'm with Nick on the sense that you've got to make sure that the bench can work. But I really think that's going to require far more regular season starters play with the bench rather than full bench than the Nuggets have been willing to do since Malone got here. And that's going to be Malone's goal. Because last year he didn't want to do it, and all the starters got broken and tired and then ran out of gas. And this year, the idea is if you're all playing them the same amount of minutes, they're just not all playing with Jokic for all of those minutes. Can those guys who are your best players help lift up less good players while Jokic, who's the greatest player in the world, helps some of those bench guys give you decent minutes? Hunter Tyson, who didn't look like a regular season player at all, looked okay playing with Jokic last night. And part of that is the Jazz are awful, especially as injured as they are. But part of that is every single person looks better with Nikola. So there are steps that I think Denver can make to keep the minutes down for the starters while also helping the bench out. But it's going to require starters to play with the bench on both sides. Like, they're going to have to do more early switching. You're not going to get 10 minutes of the starters in the first quarter, and then they're all going to go to the bench with 2 minutes to go, and then everything's going to fall apart. That keeps happening. That's been happening. That has to stop happening. And the only way that stops happening is if you get multiple starters to help the bench out, in my opinion, because they know how to play together, and then the bench piece can become competent in the roles they're being asked to play. You can't be competent in the role you're asked to play if everyone's bad at everything. Like, that doesn't give you any sustained playability whatsoever. It gives you no growth factor because you're just worried about failing. You can't actually succeed. So I want the Nuggets to help these young players that they definitely need to work out by giving them a structure and a functional support. But Malone has never wanted to do that. So it's going to be on him to take what Calvin Booth has given him and make it work by changing what he likes to do with rotations. And so for me, that's Aaron Gordon, MPJ playing more with the bench. No more, Jamal and Russ as 2-point guard lineups, if you can help it. Like, these are things that Denver needs to look at in order to – it's more what they would do in the playoffs. They're just going to play more rookies or more rookie contract guys in the regular lineup than they would in the playoffs. That's all the difference is. So fingers crossed that they make that decision sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and before we get to those kind of decisions, the Nuggets are going to have to play without Jamal Murray for about a week.
Yep.
Because that's how long recovery from concussion lasts, 5 to 7 days, they say. So, Nick, what do you expect to see? Last night, we've seen Russ with the starters, and then we saw basically Strother as a point guard with the bench, and CB was handling the ball a lot, and Aaron Gordon was handling the ball, and Nikola Jokić is handling the ball more than ever. Like, he is a de facto point guard this season more than ever. do you expect anything different?
He's also their best 3-point shooter. He's just passed to
himself. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
we'll get to that, Nicholas. Come on.
Okay, sorry.
We'll get to the 3-point shooting, by the way, after the break. But what is going on? Like, what do you expect to see from the next 2 or 3 games while we're waiting for the Jamal to come
just
back?
hang on for dear life. I have no idea. Russ with the starters is interesting. I mean, at least when he's surrounded by a lot more talent there and more shooting. It looks like MPJ might have turned a corner the last couple of games with his shooting. So that would be big. They really need him to be a sniper again. Really open things up a lot. So Brown's hitting over 40% now, right? From 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think and obviously Jokic has been money. So I think they can get by right now. I feel like, I don't know, I didn't look at the percentages, but I feel like Gordon has actually started to hit.
I'll get to that after the break, because it's a very interesting storyline right now, which makes me both optimistic and pessimistic at the same time, and I'll try to explain that. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, we are back, and as Nick mentioned, the Nuggets have actually been red hot from the 3-point line in the last 2 or 3 games. Right now, Nikola Jokić is shooting 59% the 3-point line on 4.5 attempts, not like a small sample there. And Aaron Gordon is at like 53%, I want to say, on like 3.5 attempts. And then Christian Brown is at 42. Strother is at 47. And by the way, 57 from the field. Strother is not missing anything this season. And then even Michael Porter, after a rough start, he is already at like 38%. Of course he has, like, he gets that there really quickly. Yes, sure, Jamal is at 30 and Russ is at 20 and Peyton Watson is at 10. But you have 5 guys shooting the lights out this season, despite some really horrific shooting at the beginning of the season for the couple of first games. Are you scared by the fact that the Nuggets won 3 games against 3 really lousy teams, lost 2 games against good teams, and another game against, I don't know what the Clippers are, while they've been so red hot from 3? Is that the cause for concern, or should we be proud by our guys hitting all of those shots? Gordon?
I think whatever gets you going. If it's running a score up against a terrible Jazz team or whatever, to start seeing those shots fall, if that helps, that's great. Or those overtime wins, we started seeing some stuff go down. And Jokic has been consistent, I think, with his 3-ball all season so far. Yep. Which again, that's also huge. I mean, if he's hitting that, it's just totally unfair. He's a cheat code. Even more so than normal. But yeah, I think the issue is, Jokic said something a week or 2 ago about how he kind of said, like, they're not a good shooting team, and then he sort of backed off on that a little bit, and he said, like, well, we're streaky, other than maybe like Murray and MPJ, where we've got guys that can hit them, but we don't knock them down with consistency. I think that's right, and I don't know I don't know if that's going to change this season. What I like about the Nuggets is that even if they're not hitting, they have other ways of generating offense. So, I mean, Jokic is the greatest offensive force we've ever seen in basketball. He will like keep you in it, even if you're not hitting threes. Just his production alone, and the way that he gets guys open for easy looks. But the issue is like, when we start talking about more like high level competition, like the Celtics or something like that, you're just gonna have to hit threes to keep up. You can't be trading twos for threes with Boston and with OKC. But that's again down the line. Like I think right now I'm just concerned about us, not getting blown out in bench minutes, and trying to get some of these kinks worked out, and then we can worry about Boston. I think, but they have the talent. I guess that's what's frustrating is like I think they have guys that can be 40% shooters. I think they have a bunch of them. It's really a consistency issue more than anything.
Gordon, is it the percentages or the volume that's gonna be a problem for the Nuggets from the 3-point line? Like I agree with Nick.
Shooting from the 3-point line, they shoot well from the 3-point line. They did last year. They just don't shoot enough.
Yeah,
and that's so when they have the option of taking tough shots or fall away shots or just chucking threes, they don't do it because they have the best player in the world on the block, and you might as well give him the ball rather than hoisting up random threes. Like that's the difference that the Nuggets have is the greatest player in the world hits 2-point shots better than anyone in the world, better than anyone in history, really. Like his percentage on outside of the restricted zone to 10 feet is the best in history. So you're taking shots that other teams don't take because the guy you have on your squad makes them, and you don't have amazing 3-point shooters. So for me, it's fine. I don't have any problem with that. I want him to take more threes, but I don't expect him to take Boston level threes. They don't have the number of guys on their squad who can shoot threes to do that for first off. And second off, why would I want the ball out of Nikola Jokic's hands in his favorite spot on the floor? That's dumb. So
imagine how much screaming Joker would have if the guys were chucking the way Boston players are chucking the threes.
Yes. No, it would be terrible. So the Nuggets have, again, their offensive this year, their offensive rating is unbelievable. Since the first game when they were awful. Forget that game. But so for me, really, there's no need to try to emulate somebody else. You are the Denver Nuggets offense. You have Nikola Jokic. Don't try to be the Oklahoma City Thunder or the Boston Celtics. There's a reason Boston did not see you in the finals. Like that is for sure. They had no answer for you, and they knew it, and they knew that was going to be a really tough series, even if they could hit. So the Nuggets already have all the right ingredients. What they're spending this season doing is trying to find a way to get to this postseason healthy, which they didn't do last year with both Murray and CP basically broken. Aaron Gordon exhausted, Jokic exhausted. Like you can't do that. You've got to get to the postseason healthy, and you've got to find 3 guys who can play in a playoff rotation, and you're going to spend all year making that happen. And 2 of them are probably Strother and Russ. So you're looking for one dude. It's probably a big, but you're looking for one guy who can give you something in the playoffs. And you have all year to find it. In the meantime, your goal is to not have a bench giving up negative 30s all the time, because when they do that, then Jokic has to come back in and to pick the team up, carry it around on his head for the next hour. And I don't want him to keep having to do that. So, like, Aaron Gordon is amazing at carrying a dirty workload and doing every single thing that Denver needs. I'm glad they got him extended. His role is crucial, but they've got him. You need to not exhaust him and injure him. So if that means playing Dario next to Jokic more so that Aaron Gordon can go beat up on benches for the regular season and Dario can get get it right for the regular season, that's fine. If that means Najee's going to do that, that's fine. I don't really care who does that I just care that Denver finds a 10-man rotation that doesn't kill them, and that doesn't mean that every time Jokic sits down, the non-Jokic minutes are abysmal. They can even be bad, but they can't be this bad.
Oh, I would
Yeah.
love
And that's
that.
what they got to figure
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I
That would
haven't
be a
checked
big
after
improvement.
this last game, but after game 5, it was minus 29 net rating, the non-Jokic minutes this season, which is just like, come on, guys. Like, come on.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here, guys, and I'm going to ask you, the Nuggets are on the, I believe, the longest homestand of this season, 5 games in Denver. One is already in the books, and now they're going to get the Raptors again and the Thunder
Right.
again, and then the Heat, who are whatever, and the Mavs, who are actually pretty good right now. So what is your expectation from these 4 games? Let's start with Nick. What would be par for you for these 4 games?
I mean, yeah, considering Murray's out, I think, 2-2, I think I'd be happy with in the next 4. If we go 1-3, I'm okay. I don't think really a whole lot's changed at 1-3 in these next 4 games for me. I think, it's probably going to be a lot of the same issues we're already talking about right now. And we're just early. There's always this like over analysis, I think, that happens too in the first couple of months of the NBA season. And we just forget that, it's such a long season and a marathon. And this is a team that's proven, to be a 50-win team season in, season out. Even when Jokic has a bunch of like G League guys on his team or whatever, he's going to get you like 48 wins. So I think that it's not. I think what we're talking about right now is like what comes with the territory when you win a championship. We're speaking about a team that has incredibly high expectations. Like, our expectations for them is to win a championship. I picked them to win this year at the beginning of the season. I mean, so to see the bench playing the way it is and some of these issues we've been talking about, like, that's really, it's not like a sign that, this team might not make the playoffs, we might have to blow it up. We're not even in anywhere close to those kinds of conversations yet. That's crazy talk. And I think at some point, in these early parts of the season, it just gets a little nutty from some of us. Shout out to Lad if he's listening. Insane. He's just having an absolute meltdown.
Well, yeah, people take the first few games of the year the way that they would treat the Broncos losing a couple of games.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm like, because you have the same number of games that you've played, and so they freak out about it. It's a long season. It's okay to look bad for a week. Don't take that personally and start making judgments about the season based on the fact that guys that have never played together look like they've never played together. That's okay. Like, they're going to get more time together. They'll figure a lot of this out.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, these younger guys just haven't. Forget, like, these guys just haven't even played very much basketball. Like,
Right.
We're like, a lot of this is just like on almost like pure like speculation on based on like talent, right?
Right.
Especially like a guy like Peyton Watson, right? I mean, he barely showed us anything in college, right? Like, this is kind of a real like project here. So you got to give it time. But I also do understand the frustration of having won a championship, thinking that we're now set up to like have this dynasty, and then we sort of it's just this kind of deflationary, like, whoa, let's pump the brakes, guys. Let's like start developing young players. It felt tough to deal with last year. Now going into this year, where it seems like we're getting more of the same.
Gordon, what would be par for you for these 4 games?
2-2 would be. I think that's reasonable. You don't have Jamal, so you're not going to get those point outbursts from him that might get you to 3-1 or even 4-0. Like, you're missing your second best scorer, who handles the ball the second most. Like that. That's half your offense right there, and you don't have closing minutes in close games with the way that you would normally close them with the 1-5 pick and roll, because Russ doesn't know how to do that because he's never played with Jokic that way. So that familiarity with Jamal means a ton. So for me, 2-2, I think that's perfectly reasonable to expect.
Yeah, I'm gonna just go crazy and say that I will be disappointed if they don't get 3 out of next 4 games, and I have
You're
no
a
idea.
greedy man.
I am a greedy man. I honestly don't know which 3 teams I expect them to win against. Like I expect them to lose a game. I mean, I don't know.
You're gonna lose the Raptors and win the next 3. I get
They
you.
need to win against Toronto, and the other 3 for me are coin flip games unless there's something really bad happening during the game. But we will see.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, Miami and Toronto for sure should be wins.
but it's crazy. Nick mentioned this. Like, I was really down on the offseason the Nuggets had because they didn't want to, give money to KCP to stay with the same number of real guys from last season.
Right. Yep.
And decided to go cheap there, and then of course extend Jamal and Aaron, which are of course positive moves. But at the same time, I'm just like, F it, like we're still going for a championship.
Yeah.
Like there's no lesser cause for me than a championship. Once you feel the blood in the water, you just don't want to admit that other teams are getting better than you, unless they prove it, of course. If they prove it, if somebody wins against Denver in like 5 or 6 games, then a hat tip to them and back to the drawing board. Okay, guys, before we go, do you want to plug something or any parting thoughts?
Nope.
Not
We're
for
good,
me
man.
right now.
Like
Yeah.
honestly, like this is the Nuggets are in a good position after. I don't see any real issue except for the bench. The bench has always been an issue, so looking forward to them getting it sorted out. Hopefully, starting this week, they'll get plenty of sleep at home that they can go ahead and practice and work on it.
I mean, the thing is, we have good problems. We have the best player in the world,
Right?
and he's gotten better somehow this
Somehow.
year again.
Yeah.
With the 3-point shooting has been just unreal. So
Yeah, we have rich
every
people
year he
problems. I'm
surprises
okay
us.
with that.
Yeah, like it's okay. It's all right, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Okay, I have one plug to do before we go, and that's I'm not going to have a show next weekend because I will not be I will not be at home to do it. But I will have a show on Thursday, so in just 4 days from now, you're gonna hear from me again. Unfortunately for some, and expect in a regular time slot for DNVR, the NBA show, a hangover takes from the game versus the Thunder, I believe. And that is all I've prepared for you this week, my dear listener. And please, with a cherry on top, take the word prepared very loosely. Be well, be safe, be kind to everybody. Call your mom. And until next week, Isaiah Hartenstein.